think I found something,
Val whispered, just loud enough so Logan could hear her across the room. The display case she was standing in front of contained a whole lot of strange-looking artifacts. Some objects anyone would recognize, while others seemed almost alien. Her friend, well, more than a friend, hopefully, stared back at her and shot her a glance that made her heart flutter. Breaking into this shop had been his idea, yes, but Val was honestly surprised by how much she enjoyed it. Her heart was racing, and not just because he was here, close to her. This tension was almost grinding down her nerves. It felt like she was balancing right at the precipice of some deep abyss. Adrenaline was shooting through her veins. Every breath she took felt alive. Every second that passed seemed to matter. It was different from anything else she had ever experienced. This was what living in the moment felt like, she thought with a crooked smile. He walked across the room toward her and used her flashlight to illuminate a single object inside the display case. It was an old, dark leather pouch filled with something glimmering. Val wondered again why the owner of this strange little magic shop had never bothered to put in an alarm. It probably wasn't worth it, Logan had told her. Maybe the junket here was completely worthless, but it was insured at a high rate. Maybe she wanted someone to break in. It would help her and them. Well, as long as they found a buyer after, and if not, Val wouldn't be complaining either way. There were quite a few things in here she wouldn't mind hanging on her walls. Mom probably wouldn't even notice. And if she did, well, she could always lie. It wasn't like her mother would ever show any interest in what she was up to nowadays. Logan reached her and put a hand on her hip. Val just hoped he wouldn't notice how much she was trembling right now. She could feel his breath on her neck, then his hand on her shoulder as he looked along the ray of light and into the display case. The inside of the small pouch glimmered like gold, and Val felt her companion tensing up. Her own hands were wandering along the display case's edge until she found the latch on the side. It was locked. Shit, she thought, but didn't speak it out loud. Logan's flashlight wandered through the case, and now she could see other interesting trinkets in there as well. A coin on a small satin pillow. 2 tiny bones shorter than her pinky. Something that looked like a bushel of hair. She heard Logan's breath speeding up and knew that he was happy with what she had found.
Let's break it,
she whispered, looked back and could see him smiling from ear to ear. Making noise wasn't the best idea, but they could be outside in a matter of moments. It would turn from a simple robbery into a smash and grab, but who cared? Val lifted her arm to bring down her elbow, as suddenly the fingers of the hand on her shoulder dug into her jacket with unexpected force. The light disappeared from the display case and instead shot through the room from one corner to the next until it stopped as abruptly as it had begun. A cold chill seemed to fill the air, and Val found herself shivering before her eyes even registered what she was seeing. There, in the farthest corner, was a figure. A small one. Yet its presence made the guy standing behind her tremble. Val thought it must have overlooked some kind of mannequin or the like, until it suddenly lifted one arm. The owner, she realized, and felt a hard push that sent her into the display case as Logan turned and ran. Glass broke under her arms, and Val was too shocked to even scream. The flashlight got thrown across the room, and in the whirling light she could only see snippets of the figure in the corner. It was coming toward her. Logan was by the door, ripped it open and threw it shut behind him before Val could even get fully back to her feet. "You bitch!" she hissed at his disappearing figure, pushed herself off the case and took a step toward the back door, where they had come in. In the darkness, she couldn't see the old woman anymore, but the strange feeling stopped her in her tracks nonetheless. It was like something big and dangerous had just appeared beside her. Neither her feet nor arms were moving. She just stood there, like a deer in headlights, until suddenly the bulbs above her came to life and bathed the whole room in bright white. Val had to shield her eyes to not go blind, and only then realized that her body was obeying her again. She looked up and could see the old woman standing by the back door, her hand still on the light switch. Through half-closed eyes, Val could see that she was smiling. Shit. Logan had abandoned her. He was probably gone already, with his car, which meant she would have to run away on foot. If she even managed that, a thought popped into her mind. How should she get away from the old woman? She could probably knock her down and run, but the old bag had seen her face already, and the police could also be on their way. It would just turn into another felony. Val wanted to cry from frustration. This wasn't how it was meant to be. Logan should have waited for her by the door. Then they could have escaped together. This was his idea. His fault.
"Young lady, I did not call the police,"
she heard the old woman say, and the tone of her voice ripped her from her thoughts. Val stammered, took a step back, and shot a glance at the front door. Would she be able to break through? It was glass, so...
"No, you won't."
The old woman piped up again, still smiling so brightly.
"The glass is shock resistant. You'll only hurt yourself."
She swallowed the reply she wanted to give and suddenly felt her back touching the display case again. Why was she stepping back from this old woman? Her body reacted as if she were afraid. It was the same reaction she had had when Mom had brought back her new boyfriend half a year ago. Max, a violent drunk. But the old hag in front of her wasn't dangerous. She could easily overpower her. The smile on the old woman's lips disappeared just as Val finished that thought, and suddenly she crossed the room with quick steps. There was some kind of urgency in her gaze as she came toward her. Val felt this strange dread again, even though she still couldn't figure out why the hag was disturbing her this much. It was like every part of her body urged her to somehow turn and run, even though she knew that it would be pointless. Val pushed herself off the display case, whirled around, and suddenly felt a hand on her wrist, stopping her mid-step. She looked back and froze completely. The old eyes staring right at her made her tremble. It was worse than before. Val's body seemed to give up on any kind of resistance, even though parts of her mind still screeched at her that she had to try and run. There was no way to do so now, another insisted. This old woman was far more dangerous than Max the drunk, in all likelihood, and far more cruel as well. Police? Val managed to stammer, and suddenly the old hag's frown turned back into a smile. Anything would be better than spending another second alone with this woman. For fuck's sake, she'd even rat out Logan and tell them everything about this night, as long as they took her away from here. But the old woman seemed to have other plans. Her smile widened as she slowly shook her head.
Now, we don't need the authorities involved, do we?
Val could do nothing but stare at her. Yes, she wanted them involved. The old hand grabbing her wrist suddenly increased the pressure until Val winced from the pain. She should kick and punch her, then run away. Part of her mind howled, but her body didn't listen. The old woman wouldn't let go, she knew. Kicking her shin would only make her mad. Val felt her legs trembling and sweat running down her back. She would kill her, wouldn't she? Was that the reason why the old woman hadn't invested in any security for this place? So she could catch thieves herself? The old eyes staring at her seemed to glow with joy and greed. Val felt her throat dry out completely.
I think I have something for you. Something that's better than spending a night in jail.
She could hear the glee in the woman's voice, and Val feared she might pass out from the stress. Slowly, her wrist got twisted until her palm was up, and the old woman, still staring at her, put a hand into the side pocket of her coat.
There are a lot of things in here that are too dangerous for people like you and your cowardly boyfriend, dear. Maybe this will serve as a lesson for you. It's important, you know, not to stick your nose where it doesn't belong.
Val felt a cold chill as something touched the open palm of her hand. She had to force herself to stop looking at the old woman's eyes and instead concentrate on what she had placed in her hand. It was a deck of cards. Black ones with a golden pattern printed on the backsides. Val felt the hand around her wrist shift and let go, as if the woman didn't want to touch them.
Now, pick one, and I'll let you go. No police necessary. Isn't that better?
Her hand was shaking, and her heartbeat was out of control. The old woman's gaze was still on her. Val felt it. But right now, she could do nothing but reach over with her other hand and touch the back of the uppermost card. She would have done anything to get out of there. The card seemed to stick to her skin, and she felt a pit in her stomach as she picked it up. Standing right in front of her, the old woman was smiling. Val didn't even want to look. It was clear to her that this was a trick, but what else could she do? The woman terrified her. She blinked, and finally brought the card up to her face and looked at it. The picture on it was disturbing. Two people devouring each other. Below, two words stood. The lovers. Val could see the old woman smile brightly. She seemed almost ecstatic.
Great choice, darling.
Val heard her voice as the card in her hand started to smoke. A crackling sound reached her ears before the thing suddenly burst into flames, then ash and disintegrated. There was no heat, part of her warned. Val didn't care. All she wanted was to get away from the old smiling woman.
Have a nice night.
The voice suddenly reached her as an old hand touched her by the shoulder.
And let me give you a few tips. If you see someone you know, just make sure it's really them. And if you can't stand it anymore, draw another one.
The old woman stepped out of her way, and Val started sprinting without even listening to her. She needed to get out of here. This was her only chance. Her instinct screamed in unison. If she stayed here any longer, she would die. Her legs were shaking and her heart racing as she crossed the room as quickly as humanly possible, reached the back door, pulled it open, and jumped out into the night. She could feel the woman stare in the back of her head until the moment the door behind her finally closed and she rounded the corner of the small building. Val was running as quickly as her legs could carry her. Deep inside, she felt this need to get away, to bring as much distance between herself and that dreadful woman as possible. She reached a small alley where Logan had parked his car, and her heart sank. It was empty. He had really driven off and had left her behind. Val cursed, already out of breath, then shook her head and looked around. The shadows here seemed deeper and darker than normal. Was it just her imagination? The sight made her shiver nonetheless, and without Logan here, she would have to walk home. Val cursed herself for not planning for it in advance. Then again, she could have never imagined that he would run off and leave her behind like that. She couldn't get an Uber right now either, without her phone. That thing she had left behind on purpose. The police were able to track people by them, Logan had warned her. At the mention of his name, Val felt another rush of anger. He had thrown her away, after everything she had done for him. Val groaned and growled and shook her head and started walking. She would need to get through this on her own. And if any police found her outside at that time, she would surely be questioned and maybe brought back to her mum's house. That was something she had to avoid at all costs. Val kept to the shadows as she crossed the small street on the edge of the city and looked around once more. No cars, no people. It felt almost abandoned. How long would it take her to get back home? Half an hour at least. Maybe even longer, depending on how many detours she would have to make if she spotted either the authorities or other people. Being driven around was much easier. She looked into one of the dark alleys, found it completely empty, then slipped into the shadows and crossed through it. At least, as long as the area was clear, she'd be able to keep this pace. Val stepped out of the alley and into the light of a street lamp, just as something rustled behind her.
Val!
Someone hissed, and she recognized that voice immediately. "Logan!" she replied and turned. He was in a dark alley she had crossed through mere moments ago. So he hadn't abandoned her. Her heart fluttered at the thought. She had known it all along. He would never do something like that. Val looked at the alley and could see a shadow in the darkness slowly moving toward her.
Val!
The voice hissed again. A single bead of sweat ran down her back. It felt ice cold. Something was wrong, her instincts warned her. The voice, it was his real voice. Then why was some part of her mind reacting this way? It felt like alarm bells were going off in her head.
Val, come,
the voice whispered. Her body took a step back, away from the shadows and into the light. "Who are you?" Val hissed back, and the sound of Logan walking through the alley stopped.
Come to me. Be with me, Val.
She heard him say. It sounded off. Normally, nothing could have made her happier than hearing those words from him. But right now, she took another step back and found herself right beneath the head of the street lamp. The thing in the alley started walking again. Val could hear it. It was coming closer. She felt a soft breeze that seemed to freeze her sweat.
Be with me, Val.
It begged her, and the tone in that voice made her skin crawl. What had the old hag told her?
If you see someone you know, just make sure it's really them.
Had she done something to her? Drugged her? Val forced herself to look away from the alley and down her body for once. The deck of tarot cards was still in her right hand. Black and gold, they shimmered in the light of the street lamp. She had completely forgotten that she still had them. How? Even now, looking down, they hardly felt real. Was that another trick? Or was it real magic?
Val, come to me.
The voice now demanded and pulled her out of her thoughts. It sounded less friendly now, more tense. What are you? Val shot back. The thing in the alley stopped again and chuckled.
Come to me. Be with me.
It sounded angry now. Took another step, and Val thought she could see the outline of this thing for the first time. The sight made her recoil. It sounded like Logan, but somehow not. With every step, it got closer and more visible. This thing had his hair, but the skin seemed sick and almost rotten. Eyes stared out at her that looked milky white and blind. There was a snarl on its lips that let her know what it wanted to do to her if it caught her. Val took another step back.
We belong together.
The thing coughed as it reached the end of the alley and put a hand on the corner of the building. There was dirt beneath its fingernails and stuff that looked like dark blood dripping from some open sores. This had to be a nightmare, Val thought. Maybe this whole thing was nothing but a fever dream. The shop, the old woman, the strange tarot cards, and now Logan standing in front of her, diseased and angry.
Come to me.
He implored again, the dead eyes twitching as the dried and blotchy lips formed those words. Val could do nothing but shake her head. The sight alone made her sick to her stomach, paired with the sour stench that now filled her nostrils. She thought she could keel over any second. That thing was not of this world. Val felt her stomach lurch as a sudden, stronger whiff of this odor reached her nose. She looked at the monster more closely. It was ducking. No, bending down. The feet, not wearing shoes, were straining against the asphalt at the border between the alley and the street. It almost looked like they were digging into the ground. She knew what would happen, but could do nothing against it. The thing was getting ready to charge. Val wanted to scream, but a shout got stuck in her throat as she heard the monster give off a growl, then saw it shoot forward. Dirty, sick hands stretched out toward her as she tried to turn and run. It was too late. She felt the coldness through her clothing as the hands grabbed her by the shoulders and took her off her feet. Val hit the ground hard enough to get all the air knocked out of her lungs. She wanted to kick this thing off and run, but it put all its weight on her. The light from the street lamp disappeared as the dead face of Logan appeared above her. A foul stench filled the air. Droplets were falling down from the thing and onto her face. It looked like sweat, but stank of death.
We belong together.
It hissed, its hands still pressing her shoulders against the ground. Val struggled, but no matter what she did, the thing didn't even seem to register. She tried to push it off, but it just grinned and coughed as it stared down at her with those dead eyes. With its mouth open, Val could see its stained and rotten teeth moving every time the swollen tongue touched them. She couldn't take it anymore. A weapon. She needed a weapon. Her gaze caught a glimpse of the thing in her right hand. The deck of cards. It was still there, still looking like before. The old woman had told her something.
If you can't stand it anymore, draw another one.
Val put her left hand out, grabbed the deck, and pulled the card from the top. The flame shot up as she saw the picture. The Fool. Val watched as the card crumbled into ash and suddenly found herself lying on the street, completely alone. What the hell was happening here? She still felt sick and could smell the stench from before, but there was no longer any sign of the thing. Rolling over, she came to her feet and looked around. The street was abandoned. No one was here besides her. Only this time, she hardly felt any relief. Some part of her warned her that it wasn't over yet. She had drawn another card. Something else would come for her. As if on cue, a sudden sound broke through the silence. An engine was howling and tires were squealing as a car came rushing toward her. Val felt it deep inside. This dread. She already knew that whatever was coming would be here for her. Carefully, she stepped off the street and back onto the sidewalk just as the car slid around the corner and then came barreling toward her. Val jumped back as she saw the vehicle swerve, brake, and then accelerate again. She knew the car, the make, the model, even the plate. "Mom?" Val asked out loud and felt this strange hope pushing back against the dread. Still barreling toward her, she tried to make out who the driver was. Her mother had never driven around like that. At least not when she had been a passenger inside. Something was wrong. The vehicle slid over the asphalt as the driver hit the brakes with full force, coming to a swerving stop with one tire on the sidewalk. Val looked inside through the passenger side window and could see her mother's face turned toward her. She didn't look sick or dead like Logan had. No, her mum was smiling as she normally would. Well, at least as she used to, before everything started falling apart around them. The passenger door got pushed open from the inside, and Val felt true hope for the first time that night. Mom had found her. She was here for her. "Hop in," her mother told her, still smiling, and Val was about to take a step toward it before she suddenly stopped herself. There were bottles on the floor of the car, cans on the seat. Her mother's smile was strange and crooked. The eyes staring out at her were unfocused. Val felt tears welling up. "Mom?" she asked, and her mother's smile wavered for a moment. This wasn't real, she tried to tell herself. It was just another trick by this damned old woman. Yet, the stinging pain in her heart still remained. She'd seen her mom drunk before, sometimes with Max, sometimes on her own. This smile the fake mother now showed was exactly like her real mom's had looked back then. The sight broke her heart. She took a step back and could see her mother's smile vanishing. Val shook her head and tried to take a deep breath to stop the tears from flowing. It didn't help much. The sound of someone fumbling around with the driver's side door filled the night air. She didn't want to see this. Didn't want to live through it. Her mother fell out of the car with a thud, followed by the unmistakable noise of a bottle shattering on the asphalt. What would happen if she got into the car now? Would that thing drive them into the wall? Probably. Val heard a sob coming from behind the vehicle. That sound. She had heard it often enough as well, especially when Max had left her. Val turned away and pulled the next card from the tarot deck that seemed fused to her palm. Anything would be better than this, she told herself, then drew a sharp breath as she saw the picture. It showed a featureless creature in a long black cloak, a scythe in its withered hands. The name of the card was Death. It burned up just like the other two, the bright flame before it turned into ash. Behind her, the car disappeared, but Val couldn't concentrate on that for now. She felt it, and saw it. The colour strained out of the world around her as the temperature fell. Val looked behind her at the now empty spot where the car had stood. The strange feeling overtook her, like an invisible hand clamping down on her heart. Ice-cold pain shot through her chest, and Val felt her knees buckle as her legs gave in. A presence was filling the street. Eyes were staring at her. Under the now grey-looking light of the lamp, she knelt on the sidewalk, breathing heavily as if she had just run a marathon. Someone was there, close to her, watching her. She turned her head and stifled a shriek. There, at the end of the street, beneath another lamp, she could see it. A long black cloak blowing in the breeze. The dark hood covered a face she knew would bear no features. A sound cut through the eerie atmosphere. The hilt of a scythe hit the asphalt. Tick, tick, tick. Val reached over to the deck of cards in her hand and tried to pull one off the top. She was going to die, she knew. This thing she had summoned was death itself. Her fingers touched the card and tried to pull it up. It didn't move. The whole deck felt fused together. She clawed at it, tried to rip it from her palm, but the cards remained stuck. An eerie noise reached her ears, followed by another tick of the scythe. Val looked up and almost screamed. It was standing under the next street lamp already, staring at her. Was this what the old woman in the store had planned for her all along? To pull this card, then die? No. Val pushed herself off the ground, staggered as she whirled around, and then started to run. The dark alley she had come through was her only way out. Death itself was after her. She almost fell, but forced herself to push on. Somewhere behind her, the bottom of the scythe touched the street, gave off this clinking sound. Where should she run to? There was only one place she could think of. The shop. This old lady had to help her, right? Val cried out in her mind, raced through the dark alley, and felt the shadows moving around her. It was close, her instincts told her. Too close. If she stopped for a second, its hands would find her, and she would die. She closed her eyes for a moment, heard an empty trash can falling over as she brushed past, but continued running. This thing wouldn't talk to her, wouldn't try to trick her. She could feel it deep inside. The cold hand stretched out toward her. Val opened her eyes and jumped out of the other side of the alley and ran across the next street. There were no cars or people around. All that existed was herself and the Reaper coming after her. She looked back and could immediately feel this thing stare from the darkness of the alley. The scythe touched the ground again, and its noise echoed from the walls around her. Her heart was racing, her lungs hurt, but her body kept moving. She ran along the side road, back the way she had come. The shop wasn't too far off, Val promised herself, but knew deep down that she might not make it. This thing was getting closer. She could feel it. Its cold presence seemed to cling to her, making her shiver. Every few steps, she tried to grab the deck of cards again, but it didn't move. Death was the end, the final card. She cried out and raced around the corner. A dark-cloaked figure was standing at the end of the road. Val slid and almost fell as she quickly changed directions, running toward another alley. The shadows around her seemed to move on their own accord. In the dark grey mess of a world, Death was reaching out to her from everywhere. She closed her eyes again, jumped into the darkness, and continued running. The shop was up ahead somewhere. She needed to get there, to hide. Val felt wet newspaper under her shoes, the rough texture of one of the walls against her shoulder and face, and the cold stare of the otherworldly being in her back. She didn't dare look at the darkness anymore. It would catch her. All her instincts howled in her mind. Somewhere behind her, the scythe tapped against the asphalt, and Val felt the air around her drop far below freezing. It felt like her whole body would be caught in ice any moment now. The thing in her back was here to take her, and it wouldn't simply stop because she kept her eyes closed. She opened them and could see grey light ahead. The street was coming into view. Val felt the pain and exhaustion, but forced herself to sprint those last few steps. The shop was closed, as was the thing. Her heart was beating out of control. She could hardly get any air into her lungs, and her legs felt like they could buckle any second now. But she didn't dare slow down. Val jumped out of the alley and caught a glimpse of the shop immediately. The light was on, and it wasn't grey. In a world devoid of life, she could see the only oasis around. Val cried out as she turned and ran. Tears were streaming down her face. She reached the glass front and almost jumped against it. The dull thud had to alarm the woman to her plight, right? She hammered against the door, pulling, pushing, and rattling the handle. Val wanted to scream for help, but her lungs were burning and her throat felt closed up. In the reflection, she could see it. A shadow stepped out from one of the dark spots, its long cloak blowing in the wind. The dark hood covered the face, and the scythe, now lifted up, was ready to strike. Please, she begged in her mind. It was coming. The thing slowly moved closer and closer. Light around the shop flickered, then extinguished like torches in a storm. Help me! She tried to howl, but the words came out of her throat as a whisper. Please, I'm so sorry. She looked up and saw the reflection. The thing was close, so close, just an arm's length away. She could feel its coldness and the stare of unseen eyes burrowing into her. Val took a breath and let out a final scream. The scythe was up above its head. It would kill her now. Suddenly, her body fell forward as the door opened and an old hand grabbed her by the wrist, dragging her into the light. A second hand reached out and plucked a deck of cards from her palm, and Val felt the coldness and shadows disappear. She looked up, and through the veil of tears she saw the face of the old woman, no longer smiling.
Unlucky child.
She chided her, who was kneeling on the floor, shaking like a leaf.
I hope you've learned your lesson well.
Val could hardly understand the words, but nodded anyway. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. She felt like she would faint, but the hand holding her pulled her up to her feet with surprising ease.
Now, take a deep breath and calm down. Then, get your ass out of my shop. If I ever see you here again, it's going to be worse. Understood?
Val nodded and looked around. Outside, the street lamps were still shining their bright yellow light onto the road. This overwhelming presence wasn't there anymore. She heard the door opening and felt a rough shove as the old woman pushed her outside and into the night. Behind her, someone locked the door. Looking around, she couldn't see the black-cloaked figure anymore. Only one pair of eyes was staring at her. Off to the side, where Logan had parked his car at the start of this nightmare. He was waving at her from behind the corner. Val couldn't stand the thought of looking at him. She turned and started to run. The nightmare was over, she told herself. And yet, behind every corner, from every shadow, something unseen seemed to stare out at her.